Well, hello there, Dr. Lisle. Happy day after Thanksgiving.
Hi there. Good to see you, AJ.
Same here. Well, thank you so much for talking to my group on basically a holiday weekend because we have some issues that keep coming up. And with the holiday yesterday, it seemed to propel some of them into the forefront for some of our members. So I
Sure.
appreciate taking the time to answer some of these questions. So yesterday was a holiday with a lot of wonderful food, extravagant food, rich food. And many of the members of our group either relapsed outright and felt very bad about it, or were very close to relapse. And of course, we know how important the environment is, and hopefully we'll talk about this, but a lot of them said, well, it was the stress of the holiday. It was because there was a lot of sadness. There was some loneliness for some of the people. There was some grieving because a loved one had been lost. And so not to diminish anybody's pain and suffering, and we've been down this road before with emotional eating, I just want to help people feel better and not turn to food that they think is the reason that they're doing it is because of their emotional pain and it's making them feel better. So how can we solve some of these problems without food?
Yeah. It's such a big, wide topic. So I'll just start. You correct me, AJ, if I've wandered off course and I've forgotten the question. Okay. The first thing to do is to understand what emotions are and what they are not. So what emotions are is they are signals. That is their purpose. So they're precisely analogous to pain and pleasure. So they're slightly different in their function than pain and pleasure, in the sense that pain and pleasure are immediate feedback systems. Emotional systems are more anticipatory. So they're designed by nature for us to predict a good or a bad outcome. So somebody that just gets sentenced to 10 years in prison in court is sitting right there in nice temperature controlled circumstances with a nice chair behind them, and everybody's in suits and it's all civilized, and there's a cafeteria outside at lunch. They just had lunch before they went in there. But now that they've just been sentenced, they're sitting there devastated. Why? Okay. That's because emotions are anticipatory. So the person is now envisioning 10 years in the state pen, and they know that's not going to be any fun. So the same way when two people meet each other and they're all excited about, they feel attracted to each other. Why are they excited? They're having an emotion that's anticipating recurrent sexual ecstasy. That's what's happening. So this is what emotions are: is they're signaling devices to either warn us or cue us that there are good things or bad things happening, or that are possible. So a sports fan watching his team gets excited as the team starts to make a comeback. Okay, they're still down by 2 touchdowns, but they were down by 4 touchdowns a few minutes ago, and now they quickly scored 2, so they still got a chance to win. All right. So on the same way of speaking, the team that just blew a 4 touchdown lead is now feeling anxious and worried, and like that they could be a big goat and a bunch of fools because they could lose this big lead and lose the big game. Okay, so this is what feelings are, or emotions. Emotions and feelings. Feelings is a little bit wider because feelings are going to include pleasure and pain. So those are part of feelings. But those are physical, direct action on sensory nerves. So that's pain or pleasure. This is a specific kind of physical or chemical action on a nerve ending. That's what causes pain and pleasure. Emotions are different. They are a feeling that is predicting good things or bad things. Okay, so that's what that is. Now, when it's predicting good things, it tells you what to do. So, for example, let's suppose that you're some young guy that just met this girl in your history class and started flirting with her. Oh, that makes you happy. Now, what does that do? What that causes you is it causes you to start thinking about how to take the next step towards that good thing. Okay? Let's suppose you're in a relationship and it starts to go south and you start to feel sad and depressed and anxious. What does that make you do? It makes you think about what's wrong and how it is that you can figure out how to make it right, etc. It does not cause you to go eat chocolate. Why would evolution cause you to make that decision? Evolution is using feelings to guide your behavior in order to maximize your biological success. That is the purpose of feelings. So when the sports fan watches his team start to make a comeback, he doesn't say, oh my God, I'm so excited. Where's my wife? I got to have sex with her right now. It's not what he does. Okay. Now he may eat a bunch of chips right there. Why? Because they're there. They're there as an option for behavior of the sensory pathway to try to make a big profit by getting a few calories that are super easy, super cheap, and a really high calorie density. You might as well. You can multitask. You can watch the game and do that at the same time. Okay? So now when people start thinking, well, oh no, I turn to food for emotional problems. Really? Emotional problems are actually signals to tell you to do something about the underlying problem. They're not there as a signal to tell you to eat. They're not there as a signal to tell you to have sex. They're not there as a signal to tell you to go exercise. They're not there as a signal to tell you to go to sleep. They're not signaling anything. They're telling you to do something about the problem. So when people think that the reason why they're eating crap is because they have emotional problems, I'm like, really? Where in the history of evolution did it wire up eating to solve an emotional problem? It didn't. Okay, so very often people will go through a lot of trials and tribulations around emotional trouble. They'll cry. Okay, so crying is very definitely behavior that will take place as a result of negative things that will happen. The reason why that's true is it's a signal to your coalition that you're in trouble and you may need assistance. Okay, so you will have people will say, well, I only cry in the dark, Dr. Lisle, nobody can see me. Yes, but there is no dark in the Stone Age. You can't hide this. So there's no way that crying is an adaptive mechanism to try to signal to your coalition that you may need help. Okay, that you're kind of at your wit's end. You don't know how to solve the problem. All right. So right away, when we start to understand what feelings are, feelings, whether they be pain or pleasure. Okay, so when we bang our knuckle, okay, and it hurts, we don't say, I know what I need. I need a foot massage. Is a foot massage pleasant? Yeah. Is that what we're thinking when we bang our right knuckle? We knock it with a hammer? No, that isn't what we're doing. We're going to try to do something about the pain that's in the knuckle. Okay? So you can start to see why the notion, the theory, that people's emotional problems are driving them to overeat or eat junk food is very speculative. It doesn't really make any sense from the standpoint of evolution, that this would be how it would work. So now let's start to think about, walk through people's internal experiences. So they're having trouble. They're off their diet. Okay. There was some tumultuous events in their life in the last week, and now they're eating crap. Okay. Is it because of something terrible and that they are essentially medicating their nervous system because they've got this underlying emotional problem? Well, it is theoretically possible that there could be a little bit of motivation there, but it would be a bizarre one from the standpoint of evolution. What we would expect is that their time and energy would actually be spent plotting how to mitigate the grief or the losses that they were experiencing. It wouldn't be driving them to eat. That wouldn't be a particularly useful thing from an evolutionary standpoint. So I think that if we actually look at an individual's life that is struggling with this problem, I think we're going to find that they eat off-label foods all kinds of times. So they do it when they're happy, they do it when they're sad, they do it when they're bored, they do it when there's nothing else to do, they do it while they're on the computer, they do it off the computer, they just feel like having an adventure and going to Starbucks and getting a pastry. In other words, all the time. If you actually were to do a scientific taxonomy on the times when people go off program. It will not be consistently associated with some kind of an emotional crisis, okay? Will there be times when it is true? Yeah, it will be. Is that the cause? No, because if that were the cause, we wouldn't see it any other time. So we have to look at this, and we have to say, gee, is the only time when people have trouble with this is when they're going through emotional problems? Okay. I don't think so, okay, for one thing. Second of all, if that were true, then is the solution to fix all the emotional turbulence in people's lives and then they're going to be able to do this well? Good luck. Emotional turbulence is a ubiquitous feature of the existence of all animal life, okay? So your life is nothing but trials and tribulations. Every football team goes through a process of every game where good things happen and bad things happen, and good things happen and bad things happen. Sometimes 5, 6 bad things happen right in a row, and we're feeling a little depressed, a little defeated and frustrated, okay? And then something good happens, and then we're feeling a little bit better. In other words, the nature of life is the nature of emotional turbulence. The notion that, and it has to be, just as your hunger drive isn't stable, and neither is your thirst, and neither is your temperature regulation, and neither is your sleep drive. Everything is always in flux, it's always moving, and it's always moving back and forth between positive and negative. That's the nature of life, okay? So this pie in the sky notion that the reason why a person is struggling with making good food choices is because they've got emotional turbulence, even if it were true, it would be useless information, because we're not going to stop the emotional turbulence. The emotional turbulence is an ubiquitous, constant feature of human existence. Okay? So first of all, I will submit that emotional problems are not associated with long-term outcomes with respect to, pleasure-seeking, addictive processes. It's just, the correlation is so low. I could say that pretty serious turbulence in people's lives, very, chronic, nasty turbulence can make a difference in a big-time addiction like alcohol. A person, so now we're going to look at this from a slightly different angle, that a person's ability to withstand temptation in the pleasure trap is limited. And if you overwhelm the individual, overwhelm them with stress, it can reduce their ability to resist the temptations. Okay, so that is true. But that has almost nothing to do with anything that I ever hear of anybody struggling with food. The level of the struggles and the emotional assignment of blame for the problems with food compliance that I hear are trivial. They are no big deal. They are not the same level of acute life chaos that can go on, that can drive a cycle of destructive process and addiction. Food is not that addicting. It's mildly addicting, and it's not that disruptive emotionally. A bottle of scotch is, okay? A bottle of scotch is highly disruptive to neurochemistry, highly disruptive to the person's day and the days that follow. In other words, this is a very big deal. It suspends all kinds of decent judgment. The chocolate bar doesn't do this. Okay, now, so what's really the issue? The issue is that that to try to live healthfully in the modern world, you're going 180 degrees against your instincts. That's the real problem. So let's not misassign the problem. If we've got this thing analyzed in the following way, that I know what I should be doing and I know what to do, and then I'm not doing it. So why am I not doing it? Because I've got so much stress and problems with my life that it's not fair for me to do this. I just got overwhelmed and I can't do it. Okay, that's what people will say. Right? Now, here's the truth. The truth of the matter is that doing this requires an exceptional degree of motivation and conscientiousness. So let me repeat that so that we get this clear for the record. Doing this well requires an exceptional degree of conscientiousness and motivation. Okay? What is motivation? Motivation is the movement that animals make based on a cost-benefit analysis of whether it's worth it. Okay? So a person's motivation to pursue healthy living can be variable across their lifespan. If they find out that they've got 4 coronary arteries plugged up, and that's the reason they're having chest pain, if they happen to be a highly conscientious individual that doesn't have a big self-indulgence streak and they run into Dr. Esselstyn, they may turn their life around on a dime. Okay? We may not see any indulgent dietary behavior for the rest of that person's life. Why? Super high motivation, super high conscientiousness. Right? Now, there's people that have a lot of reason to turn their lives around but won't. Why? Personality. Okay, their personalities are different. This requires an exceptional degree of both motivation and conscientiousness. And it's a bizarre degree of motivation and conscientiousness. It's not one that you'll almost ever see in people. The reason why is that you weren't designed to do it. There is nothing in your evolutionary design that is designed to go against your instincts. It's just not in there. You're supposed to follow them. That's why they're your instincts. So this kind of living, AJ, requires an extraordinary degree of both motivation and conscientiousness. If either of those two things is missing, we are likely to have transgressions all over the place. And when the people have transgressions, they may feel somewhat mystified and embarrassed about those transgressions, because they understand that somewhere out there may be people that would expect them to do this, and yet they're not doing it. And so one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to search inside themselves for the explanations. They're going to try to figure out the root cause, and they're also going to try to cover their reputation with respect to this. So they've got multiple reasons for looking for something to blame. And if you didn't turn in your homework, and you can't blame your dog, then what do you blame? Oh, my mother had a big crisis. She had to go to the hospital. I couldn't get my homework done. In other words, we blame the tumultuous circumstances of life, which made it impossible for us to do this. The truth of the matter is that there is no such tumultuous circumstances that stop you from making healthy choices. Okay? There aren't. What there is there's a lack of motivation and conscientiousness. That's what there is. That is in no way any shame. Understand that we're going to go back to what I said was important. In order to do this, it takes an unusual, remarkable level of motivation and conscientiousness. It takes both. Okay? If both are not present, the odds of long-term success are low. Okay, now, so people need to look at this, and they have to really do some soul searching and do some analyzing about whether or not it's worth it. And they may have to experiment. They may have to take several runs at it and find out what happens to their palate. They may have to figure out, what stress it causes socially, and whether or not they can stand up to it and figure out how to negotiate it. They have to figure out whether or not, it's worth the time and attention, in the same way that they take the time and attention to brush their teeth and take their clothes to the dry cleaners and to make sure that they look nice, whether or not it's also worth organizing their kitchen and organizing their menu so that they have a consistent stream of healthy food in the refrigerator and make sure that there's no junk food around. Why? Because the cost-benefit analysis, according to the instincts of eating junk food, if it's within reach, they're super high. Okay? I couldn't work in a donut shop. Yeah, I couldn't work in Starbucks. Too many pastries in there, soy hot chocolate, nothing but trouble. Okay, there's no way. If I worked in there, I'd be transgressing every day, multiple times. Okay, so we're not expecting people to be superhuman. We're expecting them, the very best thing that we can do is to educate people as to the real cause of the problems. If you think that the real cause of the problems are emotional turbulence in your life, you're looking at the wrong place. Okay. So that's the answer to this issue. And it gets confusing, and I'll just spend another minute on this. And that is that it gets confusing because after you transgress, then you can be depressed and embarrassed and guilty. Okay? And as you sit in the depression and guilt and self-disgust, then it looks like it's an emotional issue. And then you can also kick over the table and just say, oh, what the hell? You know, I've already wrecked my reputation with myself for today. I might as well eat the rest of it. Okay? And so, and being pulled along by the pleasure trap, you'll pretty well eat it till it's gone. Okay? So that's more or less, so that will happen. So there's a lot of emotional reverberation around this issue, but it's not where you think it is. It's not the misery that drives self-indulgent behavior. Instincts drive self-indulgent behavior. Conscientiousness and motivation and organization can battle against it. Okay, if there's anything that that emotional upheaval, great emotional upheaval, will do, is it's not going to drive you to junk food. It's just going to reduce your motivation to keep yourself organized. That's the biggest thing. So that, you know, that is true. You get short of sleep. You get burning the candle at both ends. It's going to reduce your resolve. It's going to reduce, other things get priority. We start taking shortcuts, etc. All that kind of stuff happens. But if you are looking for the solution to this problem, to somehow reach a degree of emotional equanimity that's going to make it possible for you to have smooth sailing on healthy living, never going to happen. There is no such nirvana or Shangri-La in the universe. Your life will be and is an odyssey of emotional turbulence. That's what it is. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what your emotional life is built of. We want more good things than bad things, but there's just no, those signals are predictors of signs that we see where something isn't going well to help us try to figure out and mitigate and correct the course. And it's to move us aggressively towards fine opportunities. Those emotions, those feelings are inherently turbulent. And the solution to the problem of healthy living will not be found in trying to eliminate that turbulence. All right.
Thank you. Sometimes you need to say it a few different times for me to really get it. I remember in 2012 in your epic talk at the South Bay Adventist Church when you said people are not overweight because they have emotional problems. They have emotional problems because they're overweight. And the way you just framed it with relapse, they don't relapse because they have emotional problems, but the aftermath of relapse causes them to have some of these emotional problems. So that was very helpful. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is amazing. So the next question, I don't think I've ever asked you. So 2 years ago at the Live Ultimate Weight Loss Conference in Las Vegas, you were asked by some parents about how to feed children healthy, especially the ones that were resistant. And you said, don't worry about it. Just get them off dairy. Any junk they want to eat is fine. And a few parents, it ruffled their feathers a little bit. They didn't agree with you and they were kind of angry. And I said, I said, we'll address it another time. So I don't exactly want to address that from that vantage point, but what's happened, or at least many people in the group have come forward because they have children that are not just overweight, but that are actually obese. And some of them are younger than 10 years old, and some of them are teenagers. And because they are obese, it is affecting their self-esteem. Their children are depressed. So now, in those cases, would you have a different answer, what the best dietary approach might be? And what do we say to the parents of these children and maybe the children themselves, because they're not happy with the way they're feeling right now?
Yeah. If you've got a child that's obese at 10, we're looking at a lifetime project. So we're looking at a lifetime problem. So let's step the camera back for a minute and try to walk very intelligently through the eyes of a omniscient parent as they look at their child now that's facing this problem. What we now understand is that there's no such thing as, oh, we're going to fix it now and then it's going to be fixed. We're not going to lose 25 pounds of fat now. That's going to be so good for your self-esteem. You're going to feel so much better. Now you're going to stay on a healthy track for this rest of your life because you wouldn't want to feel like that. That is not going to happen inside of a 10-year-old, okay? 10-year-old cannot make the connections between what it is that they're eating and what the payoff is, you know, short, intermediate, or long-term socially. There's no way they can make that connection. I recently had interaction with a parent of a young lady that all through junior high, you know, those ages, struggled with the weight. It was smart enough to know that something should be done about it, but couldn't really get it together. When did the young lady get it together? When she got into her early 20s. So suddenly in her early 20s, she's facing dating competition. So now we've got a big deal. So what did I say? What does it take? Very high conscientiousness, very high motivation. At 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, the motivation wasn't that high. At 24, suddenly it's high. Why? Time to start looking for a serious boyfriend, maybe husband. That's why. Okay. And so as a result, like a little light went on, and that individual lost the difference between being, you know, 3 or 4 points down on the pecking order, all the way up to where it is that she can compete reasonably optimally. So this, what happened? The motivation changed. That's what happened. Also, by nature, as the brain matured, 10 years, the difference between being 13 and 23 is inherently more conscientious. So a conscientious 13-year-old can be pretty impressive, but a conscientious 23-year-old will show up for work every day on time, get the computer logged in, make sure all the checklists are done, etc. That's a more spectacular conscientious human than that same kid was at 13. All right? So what do? We've got a 10-year-old kid with a weight problem. You're not going to fix the weight problem, and you're not going to get the kid out of the pleasure trap, and the kid is going to be facing this problem for the rest of their lives. And that problem, what we want to do is introduce the children to the solution. And we don't want to surround their environment with crap. Okay, so certainly we're going to limit their access to rich foods. So in the house, we're going to have a lot of healthy food. Any rich food that's around is going to be appropriately monitored and limited. That's reasonable, and but we don't have to be draconian about this. And the child will probably, as they get a little bit more independent, they will ferret their way around those limitations, and they will find a way to indulge the pleasure trap anyway, and they're going to wind up with a weight problem that they're going to wind up with. And that's going to be that. But we will have gently but persistently educated them in the direction that it's going to take to solve the problem. All right, now, that problem may or may not get a major shift in its motivational energy as they turn into the competitive dating arena. So that's when, in this case, this girl, I've been kind of watching this girl for 10 years, and then finally it happened. Okay, so that's sooner or later. You know, so we want, as Pasteur says, chance favors the prepared mind. So had that child not been introduced by her parents to healthy living, healthy food, etc., she would have been scrambling around like so many people we know, grasping at straws in the dietary arena, and then giving up and quitting back and forth, probably for the rest of her life. Instead, she knew exactly what to do when the chips were down, and she did it, and within 6 months had transformed her body and made herself far more competitive, and now knows that that's the solution for the rest of her life if she wants to keep it there. All fair, right? So parents are usually, as you can imagine, looking for the Houdini act. They're looking for a miracle, hypnotism. They're looking for some mechanism by which they can just get their kid on a healthy track and have them out of the pleasure trap and having them make a decision so that they will look better, feel better, lose weight, et cetera, et cetera. All reasonable, okay? The only problem is try doing that with a 55-year-old neurologist who has plugged up blood vessels and is super smart and has enough conscientiousness to become an MD. And you're going to try to get him to change his diet and do this? The answer is you probably won't. Why? We may not have enough conscientiousness and motivation. Why wouldn't he have the motivation? Not because he believes that bypass surgery and stents and statins are going to save the day, and he can still, he's worked all this time so that he can have top grade steak at the country club, and so you're going to start telling him that that's not what it's going to be, and he's going to say, no, I don't think so. My cardiologist says if I do all these things, it's going to be fine, right? So if we can't convince those people, what are the chances of us convincing a 10-year-old? Okay, yeah. So let's keep in mind what it is that you're up against, and let's not be frantic. The child isn't going to die as a result of being indulgent. The child is going to have the opportunity to live out their lifespan, and they're going to live out the lifespan with a challenge, because if they're obese at 10, the odds are overwhelming they're going to be obese the rest of the way. So how are we going to battle this? By nice education, good exposure to good ideas, essentially get them indoctrinated to thinking about how they're going to manage this well, but not frantic about it, because the parent usually has the fantasy that this is a one-way set of hoops or doors. They're like those doors in the Westerns, except it only swings one way. That once we gain that 5 pounds, that's a disaster. So we have to stop this avalanche from going down the hill, because then it'll never be able to be reversed. So we got to hurry right now, Dr. Lisle, and we have to stop this because my son is already obese. And so it's only going to get worse. We got to stop right now. And if we reverse it now, then it's probably easier to reverse than later. That's not even remotely true. There's nothing about weight loss at 10 that's easier than weight loss at 75. It's the same process. Okay? So what's it going to take? It's going to take high levels of conscientiousness and high levels of motivation. 10-year-old doesn't have much motivation, right? So that person's not probably going to have that. Most people will never have sufficient motivation to resist the pleasure trap. Whether that individual child will is, up to fate. But what we're there to be for is to educate and to essentially encourage and operate the environment well enough that the child knows what to do and does a lot of good things. That's all, okay? But when the kid doesn't lose any weight and continues to gain weight, don't panic. It's not a one-way. That's not how this works, okay? That child is absolutely capable of dropping 50 pounds on their 25th birthday. Why? Because they just met Mary Sue. It's what we call the divorce diet, okay? It's like suddenly everybody loses 30 pounds. Why? Because their motivational circumstances have changed. Happens when they're 25, 35, 47, 52. It doesn't make any difference. Okay? When the motivational circumstances change, suddenly behavior changes and the results change. So, yeah, we're not going to push and terrorize our children out of this problem. That won't happen. So there's no reason to try, and there's also no reason to despair that they're going to go through this. The low self-esteem that they experience from the negative feedback that they get from peers is just the appropriate internal experience that they get from having this liability. Okay, so it is. Okay, it's not going to kill them. It will simply add to their motivation when the stakes get higher. Okay, so it will when they turn into their 20s or even their late teens, when dating and mating suddenly become a much bigger issue, we will then see whether or not there's enough motivation to do anything about it. And it might not be dating and mating. It might be just sheer vanity. Okay, so in other words, maybe they want to be a TV announcer, and there's just no way to be a TV announcer unless they get thin, okay, or they get a better fit. So we don't know exactly what the motivation will be, but it will almost certainly be in the dating and mating arena, since that drives almost all of the motivation around weight loss. So we can reasonably expect that a young person is not going to have much motivation in that arena, because their brains aren't built to be that motivated in that arena. They are experiencing some cues and negative feedback, which they will suffer behind. That will make them more motivated to listen to us, okay, as we encourage them and guide them towards a healthy direction. But they're not going to turn it around on a dime and become exemplary little actors in this regard. Never going to happen. Okay, we have people in the McDougall program that spend thousands of dollars to get probably the best education in the world on this topic, and some legitimate percentage of them will turn it around, and another legitimate percentage won't. Okay, so even though they were motivated enough to get there and knowledgeable enough to get there and actually have a fantastic experience, that wasn't enough. Wow. Now you start to see how difficult it is to go against these instincts, right? So with respect to kids, let's not terrorize them and let's not despair. Let's have some relax, take a deep breath. This is kind of the journey that they're on for right now. We try to mitigate it to some degree and steer them in a good direction, but otherwise, don't stew over it. There are huge factors in their future that will influence how it is that they will play this game. Okay, so we try to get on the right side of everything with good education and experience, and otherwise we leave it alone.
Okay. So in both of these questions, Dr. Lisle, you mentioned conscientiousness, and I'm wondering, I can't help think about my brother who died young. Yeah. From what I would call a victim of the pleasure trap, lifestyle diseases. And yeah, he was valedictorian at his graduating class in Princeton, which means I felt he must have been conscientious enough to do that and to become a medical doctor. Yes. Is it possible that for some people, the pleasure trap just overrides conscientiousness? Yeah,
there's other factors. So, there's all kinds of little issues that are involved here. The conscientiousness is it's a broad category of describing an individual's orientation towards doing things, quote, right. Okay, so, but it's kind of like saying somebody's a good cook. So if somebody's a good cook, there's a lot of different things that they do well. And if somebody's a bad cook, there's hardly anything that they do well. So that's kind of what it's looking at. But somebody could be an average cook and be an awful lot better at making a particular thing than somebody who's a good cook. So somebody who's a good cook also may have no skill in a particular problem. I don't know, they've never done upside down cakes before, so they'll muff it. All right, there's 8 little tricks to doing it, and they don't know the tricks. They sort of know 3 of them, but it's when they do it, they're going to screw it up. Okay. In the same way, or actually, let me give a better example, a far better example. Far better example is athleticism. So we could take an individual who's extremely athletic, and it would seem to be that they are fine in all phases, except that they are, they're a man and they're 5'9". So they're fast, they can jump, they're well coordinated. They have great conscientiousness, so they'll practice really hard. But they're not going to play in the NBA because that requires a specific characteristic that they don't have. They may play in the National Hockey League, they may play in Major League Baseball, they may play in the NFL, but they're not going to play in the NBA. Okay? Now, the same way that your brother could have been very smart and highly conscientious, but he did not have conscientiousness around this problem. Okay, so he just doesn't. He's just inherently self-indulgent around pleasure. So that and it's probably specific pleasures. So he may have had trouble with the pleasure trap but he wasn't spending his income, you know, in some prostitute area. That's not what he was doing. So he wasn't, that isn't where the problem was. So, and there's people that may be self-indulgent with alcohol or cigarettes, but they're not self-indulgent with food. Okay, so strangely enough, alcohol and cigarettes tend to go together really well. There's huge similar genes are being pulled by both of those. Probably there's an overlap. Who knows? But the point is that it's not as simple as saying someone is a great athlete. That they're a great athlete, they can or can do anything. They can't. There's certain things that they can do well and certain things that they're going to do poorly. There's great athletes. There's an incredible young man, 10 years ago or so, that was the engine of the national championship teams at the University of Florida. His name was Tim Tebow. Extremely hardworking, devout young Christian athlete, phenomenal athlete. And everybody in the world knew that this guy was a phenomenal athlete. He was the quarterback of a two-time national championship football team in college. I think he won the Heisman Trophy. But he couldn't make it in the NFL. And that's because he couldn't throw. Okay? Now, he throws a whole lot better than me and throws a whole lot better than almost everybody. But it's not good enough to throw in the NFL. He was fast enough, he was strong enough, he was smart enough, and he was certainly hardworking enough. He had tremendous tools, but he did not have NFL quarterback chops. Your brother did not have the ability to reel this specific problem in. Okay? And so that's why, athleticism isn't enough of a description of what it takes to be an NFL quarterback. And it's not enough to say someone is motivated and conscientious to do this. You have to be motivated and you have to be conscientious, and you have to not have an Achilles heel. Okay? If you have an Achilles heel, it's going to be tough, and he did. So he had an inherent self-indulgent chip around this specific area that may not have leaked. It wasn't a general characteristic of his character.
Wow. Oh boy. Well, the next question is about people in our program that are actually at goal weight. And they say they're struggling because they're overeating on starches. And we're not talking about pasta, bread, flour. We're talking about whole, healthy, unprocessed, wet, natural starches, potatoes, rice, beans, sweet potatoes. They're saying to the point of discomfort. And I just interviewed 30 experts for the Real Truth About Weight Loss Summit, and at least 27 of them said that if you get the diet right, whole food, plant-based diet, SOS free, left of the red line, that you don't have to worry about how much to eat. You can eat all you want. So how is it that these slender people are eating to the point of bloating and discomfort and pain and saying, I just can't eat sweet potatoes. I can't eat potatoes. I overeat on them.
So it's really good. It's a great question. And let's try to speculate about what the likely answer is. We have to understand clearly. We see that their intake regulating mechanisms are working perfectly, or they wouldn't be at goal weight. So that's what's happening. So despite the fact that from their own estimation that they're overeating, they're not overeating on too many calories over time. So now the question is, what about this feeling that they're getting of a super distended stomach, and whether or not that is typical of human natural history, or whether that's something odd, and what is happening here? What's happening is that they're actually eating a diet that is to some degree unnaturally lean, and so you can do this, and a lot of very healthy eaters do. So they will eat a diet like yourself, AJ. I think your diet is very low in calorie density. And so many folks that I know have diets that are very low in calorie density, and they eat huge amounts of food. And they're at peace with the fact that their stretch receptors are screaming a little bit, and that routinely that they will feel kind of overly stuffed. But their weight is excellent and their health is excellent, and it is what it is, that they feel some drive to eat that much, and the drive that they're generally what's driving this is the fact that it's nobody knows, but we sort of do know that what this is that you're not getting very many nutrient receptors firing. So if you think about your digestive system, it has both stretch receptors and chemoreceptors, or what we call nutrient receptors. So it's not only trying to figure out how much you ate, which is the stretch reception, but also what you ate, which is the nutrient reception. If you did not have this, you would run the danger of, for example, just eating romaine lettuce and eating 2 pounds of romaine lettuce for breakfast, and then 2 pounds of romaine lettuce for lunch, and then 2 pounds of romaine lettuce for dinner. And you would eat 6 pounds of food a day, and that would be about 600 calories, and you'd starve to death within a few months. And so yet you wouldn't know that you were starving to death, because if you didn't have chemoreceptors that were paying attention to this, your stretch receptors alone are not sufficient for your nervous system to know whether you should be eating more or not. So it's going to turn out that your nervous system not only is cataloging how much you're eating by stretch reception, but it's also cataloging it by activating nutrient receptors. When you have a very low calorie dense diet, what's happening is that you're not getting very much activation of nutrient receptors. In other words, the system says, boy, we got a lot of food in here, but we don't have very many calories. So you better eat another potato, is what's happening. And so they keep eating until the system says, okay, now we finally had enough. But by that time, they've eaten a hell of a lot of food. They've eaten 3 pounds of food. And 3 pounds of food would be an unnaturally large amount of food for humans in their natural history, typically. So what's the deal? The deal is that you can have had success eating very large amounts of food to society and be at your goal weight and be very happy about that outcome. But you can also feel like, my God, I'm eating a hell of a lot of food, okay? And you are. So now the answer is, okay, do you want to modify this? And the appropriate modification would be to increase the calorie density of the food. So you could be eating a diet that's 300 calories a pound. I know quite a few people that do. They're eating a hell of a lot of food. An average woman would need to eat about 7 pounds of food a day at that rate. Well, if you do that, your gut's going to be pooched out. Now, there's nothing wrong with your gut pooching out after you eat, but you may feel uncomfortable, and it may feel strange and actually even somewhat painful. Okay. So now we have to look at whether or not you want to modify it. And there's different ways we could modify it. You could add foods that are higher calorie density in various ways. So let me give you an example. The pasta. Pasta is about 900 calories a pound. And so it's going to turn out that most of the time, somebody that might be cramming on potatoes might not cram on pasta, because the nervous system can pick up the fact that it's higher calorie density, and that calorie density is getting more consistent with meat, which would have been a very important staple of the human diet, and the meat is around 800 calories a pound typically. And so pasta is mimicking that better than potatoes are. All right, so now we've shifted the diet. You say, well, it's a processed food. Yeah, it is. But it's also, and you say, well, that's unnatural, but it's also unnatural to be eating a diet that's 300 calories a pound. Now, so now we start to say, okay, now we start to play with your nervous system and find out what is actually ideal for you. Now, remember, another thing that you and I did, AJ, was that I explained that you don't have some ideal weight. You have a weight that sits in a range. Okay, so healthy food and healthy living. Let's suppose some woman's, I don't know, 5'4", and she can be 115 pounds, and she can also be 135 pounds. And anywhere in that range, she's healthy as a horse, and as long as she's eating healthy food. So now the question is, if you are going to eat to satiety, and you're going to be at 115, that individual may need to be at 300 calories a pound. That individual at 135 can be eating a very healthy food and have perfect blood and be in great shape, but they're going to be eating 600 calories a pound. on average. It's like, okay, that's the difference. So then at 125, maybe they're at 450 calories a pound. And probably at 450 calories a pound, you're not walking away from the table feeling like you just overwhelmed your system with 3 pounds of green beans. Okay, so you may not feel that feeling because, you know, you ate to satiety, and by the time you ate to satiety on a little bit higher calorie density, you didn't have to eat that much. And that's how we solve that problem. So, you know, I want to be fearless about food and try to be as unconscious and not thinking about who it is that I'm talking to. So I would tell people, if you're going to eat a whole bunch of salad, don't worry about eating a few nuts. Okay? If you're somebody that's at goal weight, you may find out that if you do that, or you add a little bit of pasta. Okay? If you do these things, you may find that you actually start to eat less in terms of volume, and you basically stay pretty close to where it is that you are. So I would experiment by very modest changes, small changes, by increasing your calorie density along healthy lines and see what happens. Okay? I wouldn't make big changes. I would make small changes and find out whether or not that such changes surprisingly start to back off the degree that a person is distending their gut. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I wanted to ask if there's a possible another alternate solution for some of these people. Some of the people in our group, pasta is problematic, and so are nuts. So yes. Would it also be a good idea perhaps for them, because so many of them feel like they have to sequence their meals because they've been taught this, because, you know, Dr. Goldhammer has said for people that aren't losing weight, this is a good thing to do. Right. But these people have already lost weight. And so what I'm telling them is that you don't have to do that anymore. Don't eat these giant salads and giant servings of steamed vegetables. Eat the starch first. But they're so afraid. They're still afraid of starch, or they're going to overeat on starch.
Good point. Yeah. So this is, in other words, we can back down possibly the amount of salad and vegetables that a person eats. And exactly. And so we aren't cramming 3.5 pounds of food in the stomach. Yeah, I don't do that. So I'm going to, Alan's got that exactly right. If you are struggling with weight loss and you're 50 pounds overweight and you're mystified as to what's going on, I mean, I generally know what's going on, but there's quite a few things going on. But certainly in order to get that person moving towards a healthier direction, we have this religion of eating salad, steamed vegetables, and starch. We do that because we know that the person is not in a good sequence. You know what I'm saying? They're not eating, what they're eating is they're eating starch plus a bunch of rich food. So what's outside of their diet, they may be doing some pretty good decisions around starches, but what's really happening is their diet is not formulated around natural foods. They're blowing right past the concept of salad and vegetables and fruit. Okay, so what they're really eating is starches, a little bit of fruit, a little tiny bit of salad, a little tiny bit of steamed vegetables, some decent amount of starch, and then some rich food. Now peanut butter sandwiches. All right, so they're eating pita and hummus, pita chips with hummus. They're eating dehydrated this, that, or the other. They're eating a bunch of dates and nuts and, you know, God knows what. In other words, what are we doing? They're moving their diet towards higher calorie density. That's why a person's consistently overweight. And so, yes, I'm 100% with you here, HA. If you got somebody that has gotten themselves down to where they feel comfortable about their body and it's making sense, and they're actually not having to fight the hunger drive, but what is happening is that they feel like they're overwhelming and cramming the system, then the idea is, let's back it up a little bit. Okay, so let's not be quite so ferocious. And in fact, once again, substituting starch for all the salad and the steamed vegetables, and essentially getting more relaxed around the higher density natural foods so that you don't have to eat so much of them. So you don't have to eat so much food in total.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, that's definitely been my experience. When you stop being afraid of starch and just eat as much as you want, you don't overeat on starch because you're so full and you're so satisfied. And then if you're hungry, go eat a salad.
You sound like my good friend.
I know, I swear, I think I'm his clone. So for the people that just for whatever reason have to know how much to eat, we have people that have come from a history of being in food addiction programs where they're told they have to weigh in their measure their food for the rest of their life and
Right.
eat exactly at certain times. And now we're telling them what sounds too good to be true.
Yeah.
Would you have a guideline for about how much they should be eating? Because some of them just keep asking me, and I'm like, I know what I eat. I eat about 4 pounds of vegetable. I eat 3 pounds of vegetables, a pound of fruit. I think I eat about 2 pounds of steamed vegetables, a pound of salad, a pound of raw, and 3 pounds of starch and a pound of fruit. But I'm one of these people that you talked about. Not everybody's going to want to eat that much. But if you could just give a general guideline for people that have to know how much to eat.
Yeah. I would say that you should eat a pound of salad, a pound of steamed vegetables, and a pound of fruit every day. Okay? And then you're going to eat starch up to what we think is reasonable for you calorically. So it would be, for a woman, to be 2,000 calories a day, and for a man, 2,500. So so that's really where we should be at. So and fruits 300, salads 100, and steamed vegetables are 200. So by the time we've eaten those 3 pounds of food, we're at 600 calories. So that's going to leave us, if you're a woman, that's leaving us 1,400 calories. So those 1,400 calories, if you're going to eat rice, that's going to be essentially 3 pounds of rice, pretty close. That's a lot of rice, okay? Maybe you're not. Maybe you're going to eat some oatmeal, fine. You're going to eat a banana. It's really a starch at 400 calories a pound. It's a little bit, just call it a fruit. It's close enough. But the notion is here, you would be aiming somewhere around probably 3 pounds of starch. So if you're eating 3 pounds of potatoes, you're going to get a little bit on the light side. So you're going to be at about 1,700 calories then, in all probability. That's not bad. You may be a little light. If you're hungry, you can eat a little bit more. But potatoes are pretty lean. But you might be doing something like taking one of Alan's little 2-ounce things of avocado from Costco and putting that on your potato. Now we've bumped you up to a little bit closer to your 2,000. So, but the notion is, for weighing and measuring, eat a pound of fruit, pound of vegetable, steamed vegetable, pound of salad. Those 3 things, those are good rules of thumb. I don't follow them religiously at all. I don't really think about them, but I'm thinking about them just vaguely. So, obviously I'm not going to weigh and measure anything. But the notion is, I'm wanting some raw salad and raw fruit in the diet, a fairly good amount. Daily is a good idea. If you don't get there daily, that's okay. But if you're one of these people that's very regimented, then go ahead, so that you can check the box off and relax. Some people need that. Okay, so we check the fruit, we check the salad, we check the steamed vegetable boxes. Those boxes are now gone. Now the rest of it is going to be starches, and the start up to 2,000 or 1,400 calories for females, and then up to 1,900 calories for men. And so that's going to put you in real good shape. And that's a lean enough diet that we don't need to worry about, let's back up one thing. That's assuming that you're about an average size human. So if you're a 5'4", 5'5", you're between 5'2" and 5'6" for a woman, and you're pretty average build, then we're gaming this thing out at about 2,000 calories. If you're an average size man, you're 5'9", 5'10", 180-pound guy, 170-pound guy, you're going to eat about 2,500 calories. If you are significantly different than that, if you're a 5'10" woman who's very athletic, hey, you're going to be burning 2,400 calories a day. So obviously the hunger drive is going to weigh in here substantially. But if you need to weigh and measure, those are the numbers that you generally target. We try them and we see how it feels. If it turns out it's undershooting calories, then it is. Then we're going to have to add more. But this is a good way to not worry about or for example, be cramming yourself full of a huge amount of vegetable matter and putting yourself in a position where we're having to slam down an awful lot of starches at the end just to reach satiety. So yeah, I would pound of fruit, pound of vegetable, pound of salad. That is excellent. That's all you need to do.
Well, this has been enormously helpful, Dr. Lisle. Thank you so much.
My great pleasure, AJ. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Happy holidays, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.